Hello, my name is Tina, I'm head of design of Victoria Designs, and we have another crafting kit for you, the Cozy Cottage Crafting Printables Kit. In this video, Alexandra will show you how to craft a really beautiful journal with these printables. Alexandra is a highly talented and creative crafter. Creative crafter, wow. Say that 10 times in a row. Alexandra also has her own YouTube channel, Alexandra M, so if you're hungry for more tutorials, go check it out. And if you think while watching this video, hey, I would like these printables from the Cozy Cottage kit to make this journal or something completely different, you can find it in our shop, the link is below. And now I am passing the teacher's hat to Alexandra. Enjoy.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexandra and I'm glad to welcome you to this video, which is another collaboration and another video tutorial for Victoria Designs featuring one of their newest project packs, which is called Cozy Cottage. Before I give you the measurements for the covers of our Trifold journal, let me talk a little bit about the pages themselves that we will have. The pack from Victoria Designs includes 24 designs of the pages. I printed those on both sides and I printed 2 sets. Then I separated 2 sets so that there will be 8 double-sided sheets in 3 of my signatures. So each one of the 3 signatures, in other words, has 8 sheets of the double printed designs from the pack, and the rest of the pages are just some random papers from different notebooks that I purchased, or tea-dyed papers that I had in my stash, or some painter's paper, or other types of papers. Each one of the sheets, when unfolded, measures 9 3/4 by 7 3/8. When you fold it, you have the size of 4 7/8 by 7 3/8. And once you print the pages, maybe they will be slightly bigger than the measurement that I provided here, but I trimmed them down just a little bit so that it will be easier for me to calculate the rest of the measurements for the covers and for the pages. 3 of the chipboard pieces that you will need to cut for our trifold will measure 7 3/4 by 5 1/4. All 3 of them are the same size. For wrapping the covers, you will need to choose 3 paper designs from the project pack. I have chosen this one with 𝗣𝗿𝗳𝗁 roses for my front cover, and this will be the back, and this will be the page. It was just green, and you might have already seen in the preview of the project that I had these pockets with the windows on one of the covers of my trifold. So I went ahead and attached them already to one of the pages that I will use for wrapping the third part of the cover. The sizes of these papers are a little bit different. Not all 3 of them are the same. So the one that I will use for the back measures 5 1/4 by 9 1/4. Our cover will fit in here exactly. Plus, I have 3/4 of an inch flaps, additional flaps at the top and at the bottom. 2 of the remaining paper pieces will measure 6 inches by 9 1/4. I played with this paper piece for some time and looked at it against the light of the window just to make sure that I positioned this this birdhouse exactly in the place that I wanted, so that it is a little bit offset to the top for that additional third part of the cover. We will need a piece of paper that measures the same, 6 inches by 9¼ and once again we will need those 3/4 inch flaps on 3 sides. Let's start to lay these pieces down on the working surface so that you can visualize better where exactly we are going to with all this. We will need 2 paper pieces for the spines of our trifold. I will in a second give you the measurements. One of them will be wider than the other. The wider piece is 3¼ by 7¾ I scored it 3/4 inch from the left and the right edge on the short side, and then all the spacing in between I scored at every 1/8 of an inch. This spine measures 3 inches by 7¾ I once again scored it at 3/4 away from the left and the right hand edges on the short side, and once again the spacing in between is scored at every 1/8 of an inch. Let's set aside the number 1 chipboard piece and the number 3 chipboard piece and work only with the middle section right here. I will take my wider spine and apply wet glue to this flap right here, and then glue it down on the left hand side of my middle chipboard piece. 1 piece for the spine is attached. Let's do the same with the one on the other side. Now we can apply glue to this whole section of the designer paper, leaving only the 3/4 inch flaps at the top and at the bottom, and then we will put our chipboard cover with the spines here and flip it to the back. Just make sure that your paper covers the edges of the chipboard. Apply glue close to the edge of the chipboard as well as to the whole flap. Wrap it around the chipboard piece like so. Burnish on top and do the same with the flap at the bottom. And this is what you'll have for now. I will be using fabric pieces, and this is muslin, for covering the spines of my trifold journal. I didn't cut the fabric to the size, I tore it to the size. So I want to show you an example of how I did that. For covering the wider spine of the trifold, you will need a piece of fabric which will be 3 inches wide. Let's say I have my piece here of the fabric. Make sure that the outer edge of your fabric is also torn. Make a little cut in the fabric and then just stare it. I'm using the guidelines on the mat right here, so if I need 3 inches, I will match the edge, this edge of the fabric, with the mark of 0, and then I will make a little cut in the fabric at 3 inches and then just tear it down like so and remove the fraying threads. I have prepared this piece ahead of time, and it is 3 inches wide, and the length of this piece should be enough to be wrapped around the cover twice with a little flap. I also want to add stitching through the fabric and through the chipboard piece using my sewing machine. I will measure 1/2 inch and then draw a guideline, a very faint one, using my pencil on the left and on the right edge of this chipboard piece. And now I will only glue the fabric up to this guideline, to the chipboard cover, and not to the section of the spine. Align my fabric piece with the guideline that I have created, just like that. And then I will stitch very close to the edge of the fabric. Here we go. I will now do the same from this side of the cover. You might ask why we are doing it this way. That's the only way you can fit the long cover into your sewing machine. This section of the spine is the one which is wider. So now I'm going to take my cover, chipboard piece number 1, and apply glue to the flap of the wider spine and glue the cover down to the flap. Now you will take the piece of the pattern paper that you have prepared and you will apply the glue to your chipboard cover and glue it down to the paper piece. We will miter the corners. You will also miter at an angle these corners right here and use the glue to wrap those flaps of your cover like this. So let me turn this over so that we can see how it's coming together. Let's apply glue to the spine, and then when you start to glue the fabric to the craft cardstock of the spine, first make sure that you glue the fabric into that crease and do the same on the side of the fabric which is closer to the front cover. And then you will take your pencil and mark where exactly your fabric ends, and once again draw a very faint guideline using your pencil and apply glue, and then glue the rest of your fabric to the front cover. And then you can once again take it to your sewing machine and add the line of stitching right here. And I'm done with this step. You will do the same on this side of the cover. And here we have it. Next we will trim the fabric to the length that we need. So this one, for example, I am pulling by the fabric just a little bit, not too much, not to stretch it too much, but I definitely pull on it to see up to where it needs to reach. So about 1/4 inch away from the top edge of the cover, and then this piece will be glued down on top like that. And I will do the same procedure on both spines. And here we are. What's left to do is to think about the closure. I will use another piece of muslin. It's about 34 inches long. I want it to be permanently attached to the cover. I will attach it right here. Secure this strip of muslin on the spine with a tiny amount of glue just to keep it in place. And for stitching it down to the spine, I will use another piece of fabric. This is double layered muslin piece with the shape that I stitched on it that resembles a sand clock. And I will now glue this piece down on top of the fabric band that I have attached previously. And I will just make sure that I center this piece nicely. And then I can take it to my sewing machine and run 2 lines of stitching from this point to this, like that, and from this point to this, and then get back to you. So that's how it turned out. And I tied some double knots in the back. I plan to add a charm to the spine of my notebook, my journal, and that's why I added an eyelet there at the top of the wider spine. And before we continue, it might be a good time to take your distress ink and distress all the edges of this cover if you want to. I really can't wait to attach the pages to the binding and then glue everything down to the spine of my journal. But let's create that binding first, okay? For the binding, you will need a separate piece of cardstock, and the piece that I have here measures 3 1/4 by 7 3/8, and similar to the way that we created the spinal pieces for the trifold cover of our journal, on this piece of cardstock I scored from both sides a line 3/4 of an inch away from the left and right hand sides of the cardstock. The spacing in between is scored at every 1/8 of an inch again. There are a few more measurements here that we need to talk about. We will have 3 signatures, and they will be attached here, here, and here. You will be able to find a picture with these measurements in the post on my blog. The guidelines are there, and if you count all the gaps between the score lines that you will have, then the first place where one of the signatures will go will be right along the score line after the 3rd gap. And then you will count again 3 gaps, 1, 2, 3, and you will draw another line for the 2nd middle signature, and then you will count 1, 2, 3 gaps again and sketch for yourself the 3rd guideline, and that's where our last signature will be attached. I already poked the holes, and the holes are the middle one is at 3 3/4 of an inch from this corner of the cardstock, and each one of the top and the bottom ones is at 5/8 of an inch away from the top and from the bottom. I will erase all the markings because I will be covering this piece with another layer of muslin, and it's quite thin, and it may be seen through. Okay, now we are ready. So I have this cardstock piece for the binding, and I have prepared another piece of fabric which is long enough to cover the cardstock piece and to fold at the top and at the bottom. I will use my glue stick and adhere this piece of fabric to the side, which will be the inside of the binding. So if it will be attached to the cover of the trifold, like this, and in this case it's important because we already poked the holes, you remember? So we need to make sure that the edge, which has the holes closer to it and not further from it, will be the one that goes to this side of the cover, to the middle section of it. Usually, as soon as I glue this down, I take this to my ironing board and iron it down really nice to make sure that the glue stick melts and works better in this case, and that the fabric doesn't wrinkle when I fold it later on. Okay, so now I will flip it to the back side and I will glue down the flaps. I can also go ahead and once again poke the holes so that I could see them on this side of the binding too, and not only in the back. And what's left is to take another piece of fabric, and as a matter of fact, let's do that differently. Let's unfold these flaps. You see how good the glue stick works once you iron it. I have the flaps unfolded, and I will take another piece of fabric and I will measure how much I need to trim. So it needs to be from this edge of the cardstock to this edge of the cardstock. So I will just either cut off the excess or tear down the excess, and once again use my glue stick in order to glue this piece of fabric down to the binding. And now I'm ready to glue the flaps down. The next step is completely optional, but I just like the look of stitching here at the top of this binding piece and at the bottom. So I will take this to my sewing machine and get back to you as soon as I'm done with it. And it's done now. So once again, let's just reinforce those folds on the flaps so that we could see better what we're dealing with. Okay, and I went ahead and distressed the top and the bottom of this piece. So I have my signatures ready now, and I also have here a template that I will use for poking holes in my signatures. The template is the same height as the piece that we're going to use for our binding. That means that it's 7 3/8 of an inch long, and the holes are in the same places where they are on the binding. I will just make sure that the holes match. I will then just mark here on the template that this is the top. Okay, now I will take one of my signatures, and this one is planned to be the third one. I will take my punching cradle and a poking tool, and I can see that my pages moved just a little bit, so I want to fix that. Okay, I will now poke the holes, and I will remove the template, of course. We need threads. I'm using the upholstery really thick thread here. I usually unwind it and have a little tail here for an excess, okay, both at the top and at the bottom, and then I keep my finger there and fold the thread again, and once it's double folded like that. Let me fit it to the camera. Okay, once it's folded double and has access on both the top and the bottom, I trim this piece and then use the first one to cut 2 additional ones. Okay, so now I have threaded one piece here, and I'm ready to stitch the signature to the spine. And we will start from this row of holes here, which is closer to the edge of the cardstock piece. This signature is now attached to the binding. So it's time to do the same thing with the middle and the top signatures. So let me do that quickly and get back to you. I feel so accomplished once I finish attaching the signatures to the binding. I can't even explain that. Our signatures will be attached like so. And to know exactly where to attach them, we don't even have to think a lot, because the flaps that we created on this binding and the flaps that we have here on the spine are 3/4 of an inch wide. So I will just apply glue to this section of the flap that I can still see there behind the fabric, that craft paper. So I will apply glue right there. I will glue this flap of the binding down to my hardcover there and get back to you. That's how it looks for now. And you might want to decide at this stage what kind of dangles you want to have there on the spine. You could also attach them, I guess, later on, because the spine will be hollow, so you will have, although limited, but you will have the access to that eyelet there. So I think I can, yeah, go ahead and attach the second flap right now. Once I apply the glue, I curve the binding piece and attach it to the spine of the cover, and then I use the paper clip to keep it there in place. And you can see that on this side our binding will be not exactly matching the edge of the flap on the spine. Let's just make sure that it curves nicely. The paper curves nicely at the bottom as well. And then I will clip my binding to the cover from this side as well, using the bulldog clip. And now I will take my time and press with my fingers tightly and use my bone folder in order to glue this flap down. This should be the result. All the pages should be attaching nicely to the cover. Okay, like this and like this. So here we have just a little bump because of the eyelet, but I think it's fine because the bottom looks just perfect. That's how our signatures look inside. And you can see that there is space here if you want to maybe add a pen later on and keep it there. So it looks like that. Or maybe add fabric tabs to the sides of your signatures. That's also fine, or even lace if that's what you like. Okay, so there is enough room there to accommodate that, but of course we are not done yet, and what's left now is to embellish this section of the cover and this, as well as the inside of our front cover. And why don't we begin from the inside of the front cover here? You will need a few pieces of paper for that panel, and I wanted to have something like a dimensional pocket on this side of the cover, because I plan to create a few pieces of ephemera, and if they do not fit inside the pages of the journal, I want to be able to put them there. So that's why I have this accordion pocket on this side of the cover, and a fabric flap with a strap that I made out of paper, and it will close like this. So I am not going to show you how to create the fabric flap, but I will definitely give you the measurements for the main sections that you will have to cut your paper for, and of course the measurements for the accordion pocket. So let's start with this paper section right here in the middle. The size for that paper panel is 5 1/8 by 7 5/8. Pocket here is attached to the previous paper piece with the help of this flap. This is 1/2 inch flap, but for creating this paper piece, first you will need a sheet of paper measuring 3 inches by 7 5/8, and you will score it at 1/2 inch on the short side. For the accordion elements on the sides of the pocket, you will need 2 pieces, and I created them using craft cardstock. So each one of those measures 2 inches by 2 7/8. And on the short side, you will score that at every 1/2 inch. And then you will fold this in the shape of the letter M, and you will glue the flap to the pocket like this. And then you will also glue the fold of the pattern paper piece behind your base paper right here, and let me rotate it like that. And then these flaps of the accordion elements will go behind the base page like so. Okay, so I have the flap here, and on the side it looks like this. If you don't want to create the fabric flap the way I created it here, you can create it from paper. And now when that one is glued down to its place, we can move to the inside of the back cover, or well, it depends how you look at it, but for now it's our back cover. And for this section of the cover, I decided to just create another very simple fabric pocket, the vertical one. So it is just stitched to the base pattern paper sheet, which measures 5 1/8 by 7 5/8. Let's glue this panel down to our cover, and once again continue. Only one part of the cover is left to embellish, and that's this one, which is behind the set of our signatures. So for that one, I thought we should create something a little bit more interesting than simple pockets. So I have come out with this piece right here. So let me explain exactly what I did here. This main paper panel that you see in the front is done using one of the background sheets from the paper pack, and it measures the same as the base paper pieces that we used for embellishing the two previous panels of the cover, 5 1/8 by 7 5/8. Then I also have these flaps that I plan to use a string closure on, and they are glued down to the base paper sheet, and I allowed for some thickness in here because I plan to either store more tags or journaling cards in here, or maybe create a little separate notebook for this pocket here. So I have thickness of 1/4 inch here, and both of these flaps measure, let me tell you, 2 1/4 by 3 1/4, and they are scored then at 1/2 inch and at 3/4 inch on the long side. Okay, so you will glue them down to your base paper panel. If you're going with the same measurements that I have, you will probably need to glue them down about 1 3/8 of an inch away from either left or the right hand edge of that paper. This whole element for the flip out page measures 5 3/4 by 7 5/8, and it is also scored, well, if you look at it this way, it is also scored at 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch, and then it's glued down by that 1/2 inch flap to the back of the base paper piece. Let me glue this section down to the cover and get back. Let me explain about this side of the flip out page. As you can see, I have a pocket here, and this is also one of the designs from the background sheets in the paper pack, and I printed that on vellum. Here I have a few leftovers from that printed sheet, and I have another one. I really like how the designs from this paper pack look on vellum. It's so gorgeous. So I still have this one sheet left that I haven't thought about how to use it yet, but this design, for example, I trimmed down to the needed size and created the pocket for this side of the page. I really like how it looks. And then for the inside, I have one of these cards from the cut apart sheets, which also accompany the project pack, and I just randomly stamped some postage themed images on the back of it. So that's the card that will go inside this pocket. Now I will add the string to these flaps on this section of the page. I have a piece of string here which is roughly about 24 inches long. For the inside of this pocket, as I mentioned before, I thought I will put some more tags or journaling cards inside, but as a matter of fact, I created a very simple notebook. It's less than 1/4 inch thick, but it's good enough to go behind those flaps. And then I will use my string closure to keep it closed like that. And I don't even think that I will ever have to unwind it because I can, let me show you in a sec. I can wind it like so, and then I can just take the notebook out of there without any troubles or slide it back in. Okay, so that's it. And yeah, I mean, most of our journal now is done. This is how it looks. So we need to fill it with some beautiful ephemera. For the spine here, I have created a simple charm. This is a paper charm, and these are the punched out circles from the paper pack, and I just sandwiched the string in between two of those, and I added some more punched out circles in between for some additional heft, and I embellished the tails of the string with some seed beads. I went absolutely crazy with all the ephemera because the images in this paper collection were so pretty. I just couldn't stop. So I have here a few which are ready and will be used in the journal. I have a few that I still need to work on, but let me show you at least what I have for now. So there are two of these little tags. We will find a place for them in the journal. Then this is one of the pockets that you can cut out from one of the card apart sheets that come with the pack. Then I have this pocket. I think it's called the tuxedo pocket because when you take out everything out of it, it looks like a tuxedo. There are two of these journaling cards, and they're just backed with the craft cardstock. So this is one, and these images are basically the cutouts from different pages from the paper pack. So let me show you, for example, the watering can came from this page right here. So what I did, I just flipped through all the journal pages designs, and Tina has a tutorial on how to do that. So I used Photoshop for that, but if you don't have Photoshop, you can also use Paint, and Tina explains how to do that, how you can digitally cut out images from different pages designs and organize them in Word, for example, and then print them out and cut out. So that's what I did. I created two sheets of the design elements that I liked especially from the pages, and then used them throughout my journal for creating additional journaling cards and tags. So if we go back to the ephemera that I have here, so there is that additional card with a very adorable sparrow and some butterflies and those buttons and the key. Really love that. These are two additional frames that I have from the frames that I have created for this section of my cover. Then I also have absolutely gorgeous 3 tags here that are created once again using the cut out elements from the journal pages. Just look at that. All of the imagery here is stunning. Stunning. It was so inspiring. I must say that I enjoyed working with it a lot. So these are just some printed notebook pages, and I reduced them in size. I think I printed 2 per sheet. So if a page went like this, then I printed both of them on the letter size paper, and then I cut them out, and backed them onto some craft cardstock and crazy stitched around them. So these are those. Then I have a few pieces that I still haven't used on the ephemera cards, but I plan to use them in a journal, and you probably already saw that in the flip through. Then I have created this cluster with a bicycle and roses. And these are from the paper pack, and I just splattered some of that gold acrylic paint there and added some shimmering glitter in the corners. Then I really like this absolutely plain but still effective journaling card, and then I stapled that date label to it. Then I have a tag that looks like this. I layered some of the cut out embellishments from the pack, and then I created this charm and pinned it to the fabric tab right there in the top of the tag. Then I have this interesting tag with vellum circle pockets that have those cute butterflies inside, so that looks quite interesting. And I love this lantern. I added also little rhinestones to most of the butterflies that you might see in this journal. There is another journaling card, or maybe a tuck spot. Then I have this card here, and I want to say a few words about that sheet of background, one of the background pages that you will find in a pack that has a ton of these images with the houses and doors. So it was so inspiring. So I printed it out first and cut it out to create these oversized stamps. So I used my decorative scissors for creating that edge that looked like a postage stamp edge, and then I had some postage stamps from my stash. I used it for stamping on each one of those. And not only this, but I also created some slides with the same images from that paper sheet, and I will show you how to create those in a second. Okay, these are really beautiful with the images right there, so I will get back to this. These are the slides that I have so far. Okay, so here I have created a pocket and then put a few stamps behind it. So there's another element from the paper pack, and another one once again with a few stamps there behind that heart tuck spot. Then this one is also from the paper collection, and we have another cluster here that I have created. Then I made some snippets, and I plan to use them on the pages of my journal, but they are so beautiful. So beautiful. I love the colors of this paper collection. Then there is another one that I still haven't used. Then there are a few glassine pockets that I created and put some tags from the paper collection inside them. That's another one. And here is just a glassine envelope with one of the stamps from the paper collection. And then I created just a simple card for the inside of this envelope. And then this one has a cute sparrow from the paper collection layered on some a piece of a book page that I had, and this is just a stamp from my collection. Then there is another embellishment that I created, and one of them I already used on the spine of the book. I already showed you that. And then here I have a few, so you had a few stamps in the paper pack. So I created some envelopes with those stamps, and these are made out of parchment paper, and inside there is just a plain card, and I added a frame to each one of the cards using that gel pen. Okay, so the envelopes were made with the help of the envelope punch board from 𝗖𝗄 Memory Keepers. And then there are some additional tags from the paper pack, some cards that I covered with a layer of Mod Podge, and there are 2 additional tags from the pack. So I plan to glue these down in different onto different pages of the journal, and I will not show this to you now because I plan to have an overview of the whole journal in the beginning of my video tutorial. So what I want to show you right now is the way of creating those vintage slides. The paper design that inspired this whole thing was the one with lots of the images that looked like this. So I printed it out on a regular printing paper. It's a thin one, and then I covered the whole sheet with the wide packing tape, clear packing tape. Then I cut the whole sheet down to strips, and then I went ahead and put it into water and left it in the water for about 10 minutes or so, and then I peeled the back of this printing paper, and then what was left is the design printed onto the clear packing tape. Okay, so what I did then is I took that strip of the images and glued it down to the acetate strip, and that's how it looked. So at first I wanted just to cover the back of the sticky side of that packing tape with another layer of packing tape, but that didn't go as well, and you can see that it's kind of warped, and well, to cut a long story short, it wasn't a successful experiment. So I would suggest that you just glue that strip of clear packing tape, once you peel off all the paper backing from it, to a piece of acetate, and that it will look way better. And then you can just cut the images to little squares or rectangles, whatever, and use them in the frames that you can also create on your own. So for example, all of these were made out of craft cardstock, and I first prepared the pieces, which were 2 1/4 by 4 1/2, and then I folded them in half like so and cut out a frame. So this frame, for example, at the top and at the bottom stands 1/2 inch away from the edges of the paper sheet, and on the left and right hand side it stands 3/8 of an inch away from the edges. So while it is still folded in half, you use your craft knife and cut out that frame, and you get the base of your slide. And then what's left is just to cut out some images from that clear strip that you have created, and to sandwich them down between the parts of your frame. And there you have it. You can then embellish the frame the way you like it. I thought this is such a cute use of that paper design, and I wanted to share that with you. I will definitely be using more and more of that design for creating additional slides because they are so cute. So thank you so much guys for watching. I hope to see you back in the upcoming video tutorials featuring the most gorgeous paper packs from Victoria Designs. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching Alexandra's tutorial. I hope you are very inspired now to start crafting and make a journal of your own or something else. And if you would like to make this journal with the printables from the Cozy Cottage kit, the link is below. Go check it out in our Etsy shop. And I wish you a very beautiful day. Bye bye.